Hey, y'all. This is Frank the Bigfoot, and you're listening to the Paranormal Punchers.
Hey, friends. Welcome to Paranormal Punchers. I'm Mark.
I'm Alicia.
I'm Nash.
No, Dave. Dave's busy.
Yeah.
But Dave is feeling better.
Yeah? Yeah.
He'll be back with us very soon.
It's hard to acclimate every time he goes back and forth to the Hollow Earth. It changes. It's a different environment. You know, you have seasons here. You got, allergies and whatnot. And then he goes down into the Hollow Earth. It's a whole different game.
True. But I did see him Saturday for Oktoberfest.
Oh, well, he's got to come out for priorities.
We probably should just record. Yeah, we should just carry the equipment around. So every time we see him at the pub, we just record there. I had a good time. I'm a big fan of Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
Beer, had sauerkraut.
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Do you celebrate Oktoberfest?
Well, if using those definitions, I would say yes.
And by celebrate, I literally mean go have a beer.
Go have a beer and have some schnitzel and some sauerkraut and some all kind of good meat-like products. And beer. Did we say beer?
We said beer.
Lots of beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's your brewing coming along?
Coming along great. It's coming along great. I did speak with Mike over at Moo Duck, and they said the next one going on tap is the beer for my Bigfoot.
What?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, he said there'll be an update coming around probably either this week or next. It's the next kid going on.
Okay, cool.
So we're getting ready to launch.
Yeah, maybe we'll sell a couple shirts.
That'd be great.
Then we got to work on the next paranormal-inspired beer.
That's right.
You think, I wonder if Moo Duck Mike will just let us keep putting stuff on tap.
Yeah.
I asked him today about coming and brewing, and he's like, I brew every Monday, so whenever you want to come on up and bring your book with you.
Wow.
So
That's very cool.
Yeah. So anytime we put together a recipe or have an idea, we'll put it together and I'll take it over there.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
If it doesn't taste good,
Yeah, well, that's his deal. Oh my gosh, he might be listening to this. Oh, wait, hold on for a second.
they all do.
Yeah.
Come on, Cass, put a good word in for me over there. Come on.
This should be a fun episode. We had the chance to talk with author John Olsen. He has a new book out called Stranger West, and he just told us a bunch of scary stories.
Oh, yeah.
So we can't wait to share that with you. It should be fun. Before we get there, as always, we have some listener feedback. This time brought to you by Living Among Bigfoot, the only book series that drops the 15th of every month on Amazon. No, that's where I paused.
Empty pause.
Dramatic pause for Alicia to come in with her book review.
Oh, I just finished book 10.
Nice.
It was good. I recommend this series to everybody.
Oh, there you go. All right.
The best.
It's the best.
Oh, no, I meant you and your book
Yeah,
reviews.
I know what you meant.
Yeah. All right, we're going to kick things off here. We heard from Andrew Z. Your last episode was so good, I've listened to it 3 times.
Oh, my.
What?
Wow.
Me and my grandpa, being avid outdoorsmen, talk about what we would do if we came across a Bigfoot. He says he would just wave and let it be. And I love that. Oh, guys, just don't have time for that, I guess.
Nice.
Obviously, Andrew Z was referring to the Ape Canyon one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I missed this in our email bin.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I found it. Otherwise,
It just would have,
yeah. So Andrew Z, I'm sorry I never got a chance to reply to you, but I found that email, and I'm talking about it now.
But I would definitely concur with Andrew, and I would say, yeah, I would probably do the same thing. Just kind of wave and let it go on. Let it go on its good way. I just don't have the time.
It's not like you're going to fight it.
Right.
Exactly. So I agree with the old guys. Just don't have the time. Yeah, I would be right there with your granddad.
And Andrew also said, I just turned 21 on the 28th of August.
Oh,
Happy birthday.
congratulations!
I know, I almost said October because it's about to be October.
It
I'm sorry I missed this email, but we found it. Happy belated birthday from
Definitely.
all of us. And he'd like to know, can we as viewers order some of that beer?
That's a tough one. I don't know if it's one to be distributed. I don't know if they're not really set up for that.
Can you even ship beer?
I
That's
think you can
I don't
in Pennsylvania.
I don't think you can. It's
Yeah.
a whole logistical nightmare.
Well, there's a company in PA that'll ship to you in PA, I think within a certain mile radius. I forget the name of the brewery.
quite possibly,
So, but I don't.
but it's inside PA though. So maybe I don't know. That's a good question. That's a really good question to look into.
Yeah.
I mean, does UPS even check? What if we pack it really tight?
Well, yeah, pack it tight, and you might
Pack it full of coffee grounds so the dogs can't sniff it. Oh, that's something else.
sniff the cans. I would normally say, well, maybe, but, this is a podcast being heard by somebody who works for a FedEx or a UPS company.
True. Well, you already know.
Yeah.
The NSA is already listening because of all our great facts.
So, I just don't know. I don't know. I don't think it does. I don't think we can, but
Yeah.
I wish we could.
I wish we could. I really do.
Well, happy birthday, Andrew. I guess you'll have to just drive the whole way to Pennsylvania.
That's
And
right.
if you do, we'll buy you
Oh, yeah.
a whole growler full.
Oh, yeah. We'll give you.
And then we'll drink it with you. Yeah.
That's right. Well, and he had his birthday just before Oktoberfest, so that's a perfect timing. What do you say, August 28th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, can you imagine that? Your birthday is just before Oktoberfest kicks off? Wow. And on the 21st, that's a big birthday right there.
True story.
Lots of beer.
We heard from Jeffrey Finch. 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
Oh, thank you.
Best podcast ever. I should just leave it there. Show's over. Hey, remember, if it's not weird. Jeffrey said, found the podcast about a month ago, and I can't stop listening to it. You guys are funny and informative.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for the liberal stretch on that second part of that. Wow.
Jeffrey, thank you so much, man. I'm glad you found the show. We heard from Will, our good buddy Will, out in Missouri. Hey, guys, just thought I'd let you all know we are officially starting the 2019 harvest on the farm. The reason I'm telling you this is because if you remember my story of seeing UFOs last time. And so, Will, he's going to keep us posted if he sees any UFOs on this harvest.
Ooh.
So, yeah, let us know right away.
I know.
Yeah. Take your camera with you. See if you can get some nice blurry pictures because you can never get clear pictures. So
I know.
Yeah. Let
Thanks,
us know.
Will. Yeah, thanks, buddy. We heard from Erin. She says, Chris has been listening to you guys' podcast in Afghanistan on Spotify. I'm going to stop right there. Chris, I hope you're okay. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for your service.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank
Be
you.
safe, and I can't wait till you come home.
Definitely.
Even though you live in Texas, we'll still have to
I
find a
know.
way to get together. But be safe, my friend. Okay, so in reference to us talking about tortillas, since now they live in El Paso,
oh, yeah.
she says, regarding corn tortillas, if you guys have a gas stove, my Mexican friend told me to always warm them as they, I can't make out that.
They're freshly made. You throw them on the gas stove and brown
Oh,
them
they
up a little
taste
bit?
so much better. It was an autocorrect, Aaron.
Yeah.
It's nothing on you and your typing skills, just an autocorrect. Yeah, they taste so much better when you warm them up. So we turn on our open flame stove and lay the tortillas right on the open flame for a bit, then flip it.
Oh.
So much yummier than flour ones. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to try it.
Give it a try.
We don't have a gas stove with an open flame, but she does say you can put it in a pan, heat it up.
Yeah.
Do the same. So now we're going to feel like corn tortillas are going to be the topic on many episodes.
Oh, yeah.
I still like flour tortillas. They're wonderful. Corn is good, too. But flours, I'm a flour tortilla guy. Holding true.
Well, thank you very much, Aaron. Can't wait to see you guys again. Chris, like I said, be safe. All right. Speaking of Chris, we heard from Chris. Different Chris, different spelling. Love you guys. Funny, informative, upbeat, and weird. You sound professional without sounding fake. That was Sonny Stillwell's. Let me know if you ever want to do a crossover or an investigation with us here at Touched by a Podcast. It would be an honor.
Ooh.
Wow.
Chris, yes, we would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, we could do a crossover episode. I don't know where you're located, but if you're close enough, we will go on an investigation with you also.
That'd be awesome.
And if you're close to Gettysburg, well,
Right.
that we'll just meet you there.
We'll just meet you there.
That's awesome. Let's see. And Touched by a Podcast on Instagram also left a message in reference to one of our Green Children of Woolpit posts. They just said, the Hawk's got some explaining to do. I'm glad somebody threw in a Hawk joke about the Green Kids. I love it. All right. Let's see. We have Ray Bands 94. Ray Bands 94 left a 5-star.
Thank you.
On Apple Podcast. He said, good.
That was it?
Yeah. Entertaining and not 100% serious.
No way.
Ray Bands totally gets us. Then he had a Twitter post, just started listening earlier this week. Fantastic stuff. And then this happened. He had another, was this a Twitter post? Yes, I am now a proud patron of Pea Punchers, and you should be too. So Ray Bands became a member of our Patreon.
Wow.
I know.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much.
Awesome.
Our Patreon is free.
Yeah.
We'll post content there. You can check it out. You don't have to donate, but Ray Bands donated, so that's awesome.
I know. Thank you.
So it's free, but we don't say no if you want to.
Right.
If you want to donate to the cause.
That's right. Exactly.
And
right.
it just all goes back into the podcast. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Do you think part of the podcast fund is like this beverage we're drinking?
Probably.
Maybe. Maybe not. Who knows?
Let's see. We heard from Chromos because Chromos went to the Area 51 raid.
Oh.
I never asked him if he got to do a Naruto run, though.
Oh, man.
With the arms back and the whole thing.
I guess that's over. Otherwise, I'd say we should run out and do a Naruto run up and down the street and see how long it takes people to call the cops. But he said it was a bust, a big scam. It had potential, but they dropped the ball.
Aww.
That's a bummer.
I know, right?
Oh, well. That sucks.
There's always next year.
There's always next time.
Is there anything around? We should organize our own alien thing around here.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'm sure.
And it would just be
I'm
a
sure
party,
people out
right?
towards Pittsburgh, like, we got Chestnut Ridge, dude.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's like 3.5 hours away. Something closer.
Yeah.
Thinking caps on.
When we figure it out, we'll let you know.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, everybody. If you want to send us feedback, just go to the website or paranormalpunchers@gmail.com. We love to hear from you. We love topic ideas. We're just happy that you're part of our weird little family.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I'm excited because this was a really fun interview. John Olsen, he has a new book out called Stranger West, but this is the third in his book series.
Yes.
And it was great because it was like literally sitting around the campfire, John just telling us some creepy, weird stories. I loved it, and I hope you do too. So I'm going to stop talking, and we're going to go to that interview. All right. We are here with author John Olsen. I'm going to read this quick because I think this explains John. I love it. Fueled by his own experiences with the unknown, John has spent the last 25 years interviewing and documenting firsthand accounts of those who have witnessed all kinds of strange and unusual phenomena in the Western United States. John, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on. This is a pleasure. I really appreciate you guys and the opportunity to come talk about my books.
Yes, and you actually have a new book right now that's called Stranger West.
Yes. Yep. That's my newest one. It just came out, I guess, about a month and a half ago, so not too long ago. But it covers basically a lot of the Western United States.
And I was reading a little bit there, and I was fascinated by the fact that you have your own amount of paranormal experiences, and I don't know, I'm ready to hear some stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, oddly enough, the house that I grew up in, excuse me, was over 100 years old. I grew up in northern Utah, and like I said, the home I grew up in was over 100 years old. By the time I was 8 years old, I noticed that there were things that went on in my house that didn't go on at my friend's house, and I have an older sister. She's 4 years older, and then a younger brother that's about a year younger than me. And we would talk about the things that were going on. And my parents were adamant that we not talk outside of the home about what was going on. They had this fear of people thinking we were crazy. And growing up in a small town, you know, people in small towns like to talk, so they were afraid. They were afraid of that. So we would talk about amongst ourselves about the things that were going on. And then it drove me to do a lot of research on the paranormal. And that just kind of drove me from my home into, you know, interviewing other people and getting their stories. But I've had many experiences in that house growing up, all the way to today. In fact, my parents still live there. My parents are a lot more open about talking about it, but I've had a lot of really strange experiences in that home.
Yeah. Now, I was able to read your book. I thought it was fantastic, first off.
Oh, thank you.
I thought it was I enjoyed it so much. But one thing that you talked about in your intro was a stair monster that you dealt with when you were younger. And I wanted to learn about that so much more because it actually wasn't in the book. I think it was in another one, like an early one, right?
Yes. So in the house, there is a really steep staircase that goes from the main floor up to the second floor. Mm-hmm. And in fact, you know, if you built it today, there's no way it would pass code because it's so steep. But it actually goes over the main bathroom and then upstairs. And any time of the day, you could be either in the restroom or upstairs or downstairs, and you would hear either small, quick footsteps running up and down the stairs or heavy boot steps going boom, boom, boom up the stairs and then down the stairs. And there was nobody there, obviously. In fact, one of the incidents that I had when I was older, when I was a teenager, I was upstairs with a friend and we were studying for school, going through for a test. And I was looking at my book, and all of a sudden she closed her book and she threw it on the floor and just looked at me. And I was like, what's going on? What do you – and she says, what is that noise? And I'm like, what noise? And she says, well, we've been up here for half an hour, and 3 times somebody has walked up your stairs and down your stairs, but there's nobody on your stairs. And I realized, she'd heard, you know, the stair monster, oddly enough, because that's where – you know, I spent a lot of time there. It almost becomes background noise to you. You just kind of glance to see if somebody's there. Right. And I had to explain to her, oh, well, you know, my house is haunted. And I had to explain to her some of the experiences. And later on, she started telling people, and I was at parties or I was on dates, and somebody would say, oh, John's house is haunted. Have him tell us some stories. And so yeah, the stair monster was one when you're a little kid and things are happening like running up and down the stairs. We just kind of coined the term stair monster because, you know, there's something that you would say as a little kid, and it's just kind of carried on throughout. Right. That's what we refer to the ghost in the house as the stair monster.
Excuse me. Now, I actually hear footsteps outside of our bathroom in the middle of the night, and it freaks me out because I know that there's nobody out there. It's so I don't know what it specifically is, but
right. And I think a lot in this home, I've got a lot of different things that have gone on, and I think that one could actually be a reoccurring sound, like not an interacting ghost necessarily, but more of a I forgot the term off the top of my head, but something that just reoccurs whether you're there or not. I think the stair monster could definitely be part of that, but there's also a lot of interaction that goes on in the home. He likes to play tricks, especially on family members that he knows that will bother more than others. For example, my oldest son, you know, my kids spent a lot of time at Grandma and Grandpa's. They did growing up because, you know, I lived one town over from the house. And I remember my oldest son, my mother had a snowman that she had purchased. She loves decorating for different holidays, and she'd purchased this snowman, and it was about 4 feet tall, and it was made out of cloth, and it had a heavy base, sand base. And when she would bring that out during Christmas time, my son hated it, and and it would actually move on occasion. When you were gone from the house, you'd come back and it would be a different part of the room. And it was summertime, and my son was 15, and he was doing some painting for Grandpa. And in the basement is where they store all of their stuff they're not using. And in the basement was the snowman. And my son is painting in the hallway, and there's only one staircase and hallway into the basement. There's no other way into the basement. And he's got his headphones on, and he gets a really creepy feeling. And he said he stuck his head around to look in the room, and the snowman was in the corner but turned around and facing him. And so he went in and he picked it up, and he turned it facing the corner like it was in timeout, he said. And he went back to painting. And a few minutes later, about 10 minutes later, he got just another really creepy feeling, he said. And he took the headphones off and looked into the room. And not only had the snowman turned all the way around, but it was about halfway across the room towards him in the middle of the floor. Yeah. And he said he put the paint down and went upstairs and he said, Grandpa, I'm not doing one more thing in that basement until the snowman's gone. And so it sat on the porch for a couple years until my mother finally sold it at a garage sale.
Wow.
But yeah, it's interesting how the ghost in the house likes to play tricks on people.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That would definitely freak me out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would. It would, yeah, it's definitely scary, especially when you know you're the only one in the basement.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's pretty awesome. But
now, with the new book here, Stranger West, if you don't mind just telling everybody what it's all about.
So, my first book was called Stranger Bridgerland, and Bridgerland is actually refers to the northern part of Utah, which is where most of my stories for my first book came from. And then as my next one branched out a little bit more, I got contacted by more people from further away, and I called that one Beyond Stranger Bridgerland. And with the third one, Stranger West, I've got stories from all over the western United States, Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Oregon, and I believe I have one right in California too, or at least by the edge of California between Nevada and California there. But it's just a vast different swath of paranormal stories. There's ghost stories, there's Bigfoot stories, UFOs, cryptids, and I've even got a section about glitches in the Matrix kind of thing, stuff that doesn't necessarily fall into the other categories of the paranormal. But I've been getting stories from all over the West since my first book came out.
Now, are the stories in the book, are they your stories, that stuff that happened to you, or is it a collection of your stories plus other people that had paranormal contact of some sort?
So there's a few stories in the new book. There's a few stories that happened to me, and then the rest are all firsthand accounts from people that I've interviewed that have happened to them. So I interview people and then write down their story in first person and put it in the book. So I've been doing interviews of people from all over who have some paranormal stories and strange stories.
Yeah, and some of the chapters, I mean, they're just so. We have Wendigo, we have black-eyed kids, UFOs. I mean, yeah, maybe I would like to move out west for a little bit. I mean, sounds like a hotbed out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, it's funny because I'll tell a story or someone will read my book, and especially with black-eyed kids or something like that. I had a lady come to me and she had heard that story, a black-eyed kid story, and she didn't know that it was a thing because she had actually had an encounter with a black-eyed kid, and she thought she was alone. She thought, she hadn't told anybody because she thought she didn't even know that was a thing. And then she realized other people had incidents with black-eyed kids too. And so she came to me and told me her story. So yeah, it's part of the whole reason I kind of wrote the books was to help people realize that, you're not alone, that, a lot of people have had paranormal stories, and it's interesting how some of them connect like that.
Right.
Can you tell us one of the stories? We got black eyes at 4 a.m. and there's another one, black eyes at the station. At the station. Can you tell us like a little bit of that story?
Yeah, you bet. So the black eyes at 4 a.m. Actually happened here in northern Utah. This lady was getting ready for work. She worked at the hospital and worked really early in the morning, and she got up like she usually did and got dressed. And when you leave early in the morning, it was around 4 a.m. She leaves the house and it's still dark outside. And as she's approaching the light in this little town, it's called Smithfield, there was a kid crossing the road, and he has a hood, covering his face. And she got a really creepy kind of vibe from this kid as he crossed the road. But the light changed after he crossed, and she drove down to the little gas station, the 7-Eleven, where she gets her coffee in the morning. And she goes in the store and gets her coffee. And when she goes out, the boy's sitting on the curb out there by her car and looking at the ground. And, it's not necessarily a place where you would be scared of people. It's a small town. Everybody knows everybody, but she didn't recognize the kid or the coat, And so she gets in her car, and just as she gets to the car, the kid's right there at the door of her car asking her for a ride. And she just had this sense of dread come over her that, she did not want to give this kid a ride. That was not a good thing, which is kind of common with black-eyed kid stories. If you're aware of those, they won't enter your car or your house without permission, and just this fear of dread that comes over you when it happens. And when he looked up a little bit, she could see under his gray hoodie and realized that his eyes were jet black. And again, this horrible feeling of dread. So she just took off and headed for work quick. Just catching a glimpse of him in her rearview mirror as she took off, but definitely freaked her out. And she'd never seen that kid or that before or since. And like I said, it's kind of a smaller town. She said you usually recognize people, but definitely didn't recognize him.
Yeah, we did an episode on the black-eyed kids. I don't know, maybe the first couple we did, actually.
Yeah.
No, it's fascinating. I'm always curious, like, why are they asking permission to come in? You like a vampire? What's going on?
Right.
Right. It's like it seems that they're following some sort of rules that they have to or something. It's really strange. Very strange phenomena. It's the other story was very similar. It was the middle of the night. This gentleman was driving through a rural part of Idaho and ran into two of them at a gas station who asked for a ride up the road to home. And these were even younger children. This one that I just told you, she said he seemed about 14 years old. These other kids seemed even younger, but just the fear of dread and that he is not going to let them in the car and taking off, and then again seeing that they had the black eyes. It's really fascinating that whole idea of, because kids are, you generally think of kids as with innocence and not being frightening, but they definitely turn it around on you.
Right. Now, there was one story in the book that I was intrigued by, and maybe you could talk about it a little bit, but the little green man in the suit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
I was contacted by this gentleman who had this experience that he couldn't explain. He grew up in a family with quite a few kids, so him and his younger brother shared a room. And he said that one night they were in the house and he'd gone to bed and was waking, and seemed to wake in the middle of the night, and his little brother's on the edge of the bed, and there's a little basically what he said was a little green man sitting on the shelf of the windowsill, talking to his little brother. And he, said something. He remembered having a kind of a conversation with him and the little brother. And what he remembered the most was that he promised not to say anything. I promise I won't tell anybody. Mm-hmm. And then he just kind of rolled over and fell back asleep. So he wakes up in the morning for school, and he's like, that was a weird dream because it's just hazy and it doesn't make any sense. And so he goes to school, and he's just seems to not be able to shake this weird dream that he had about the little green man in the green flashy suit. And that part is very vivid, but anything else? Well, he gets home, and he's got to get some stuff to go to work, and he goes to his room, and his little brother is playing on the floor, and his little brother, says to him, "Did you keep your promise?" And he's like, "Well, what promise?" He's like, "You didn't talk about the little green man, did you?" And he just kind of is in awe and shock because now it's hitting him that this wasn't a dream. This really happened. And his little brother just kind of clams up and won't talk about it. And he tries, really hard to get his little brother to talk about it, and was adamant that he wasn't supposed to talk about it either. And so he went for years just thinking about this. And when his little brother was older, he didn't seem to quite remember it very well, just vaguely, the little green man and that night. And so I found that just really kind of a creepy, fascinating story. Right. He was just, shrugging it off as a dream. But, when his little brother says that, that just makes your, the hair on the back of your neck stand up, and like I'm sure it would with him. So.
Yeah, that I don't even know, like I couldn't even say like what it was. It was you know what I mean? Like I couldn't even explain that. But there was another. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say because it doesn't seem to fall into like a ghost or haunting or it's kind of an out there kind of a thing. So yeah.
So you had there was another story. I think it's called Haunted in Boise.
Oh, Haunted in Boise, yes. Yeah,
and then it was a haunting that was going on in the house, and the person actually said, this is my house. I'm not going anywhere, so you need to leave. And that's something that we talk about a lot in a lot of our stories. You have to tell them this is your place. You cannot be here anymore. You know what I mean? And I thought that was cool. But
yeah, it's interesting with this story that it's interesting that you mentioned that because of what I do and how I interview people, I have a lot of people that will contact me, and it's because of the way some of the television shows are set up. It's amazing how many people immediately jump to, I have a demon in my house or something, something evil. And I like to sit down with people and tell them, the vast majority of what's going on, if it is paranormal, because sometimes you can explain it with other things, but the vast, vast majority isn't something necessarily evil. You're just dealing with somebody who's passed on. And I said it's the same as if you walk down the street and you meet 10 people, 9 of them are going to be pretty nice people. It's that 10th one that might be a real jerk that you have to worry about. And so, yeah, a lot of times, I'll explain to people that if it's going on, you can, if you ask or say, hey, you just talk out loud. What you're doing is scaring my kids. It's scaring me. This is my home now. You need to be respectful. And people, you'd be amazed at how many times that actually helps people and gives them the power back. And it might flare up every once in a while. But again, I tell people just speak up, let them know this is your house. This is what's going on. And yeah, so I really like that part of that story that she was able to do that and stay in her home. So.
Yeah, I really like that one too. Just kind of helping other people. Yeah. Like if you're having an issue, you just need to tell them, this is mine.
Right.
To leave.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. Even at times with the house that I grew up in, My wife and I had an experience where about a year ago we sold our house and we were going to purchase another one. But in between there, the one that we were going to get fell through and we were going to have to rent an apartment for like a month. And my parents were like, oh, don't rent for a month. Just live in the upstairs, at our house, which we were fine with. But my wife was a little nervous because, it's obviously a haunted house. It's haunted. And I told her, well, when we got there, I said out loud, Annie and I are going to be staying here for a while. She's not comfortable with, being bothered. Can you leave her alone? And for 3 weeks, absolutely nothing happened. And she came to me and we were upstairs folding clothes. And she said, we've been here for 3 weeks and nothing's happened. And I said, well, that's because we asked him not to. I said, but if you're okay with it, I'm sure he'd love to introduce himself. And she just kind of chuckled and laughed. But oddly enough, after I said that out loud, the very next morning, I left very early for work. And she was lying in bed. And something snuggled up to the back of her and ran their fingers through her hair. And she thought it was me at first. And then she was like, oh, John went to work an hour ago, and she jumped out of bed. And there was nobody there, and there was a little bit of a laugh, which, because she said, nothing's happened. What, why hasn't anything happened? And I just kind of laughed. I said, well, that was kind of an introduction to you saying it was okay to let him, for him to let you know he was here. So.
Yeah, but I mean, geez, that's super creepy to crawl in bed and.
Yeah, to have that happen. So. And but it is interesting that if you're vocal about it, he was respectful until she said, "Oh, is he here? I don't know." So, wow.
Now, with your paranormal experiences, have you ever gone out and done an investigation of any kind?
I've done a few with a couple groups. Mostly what's happened is if people have asked me for help, I've just come in and talked to them and gone through, some of the things that could be. And again, talking to them about being vocal. There's not a group in particular that I've gone out with. My sister, like I said, I have a sister that's about 4 years older. Because of her experiences, she had a group for a while, and I did a couple things with them, which was fun. And, I would love to go with a couple groups and do that, but I haven't done a lot of ghost hunting myself, no.
I mean, I guess you don't really need to because the ghosts seem to be finding you.
Right, exactly. Yeah, doesn't seem to be a problem. So, but
have you ever? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say a lot of people go out and they're trying to find proof, and to me, it's I don't need any more proof. It doesn't scare me, and so it's always kind of been there for me. So anyway, I apologize. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, have you ever come across the Hat Man or like Shadow Man?
I have interviewed a lot of people who have come across shadow beings in the mountains. That seems to be a big thing. Interestingly enough, because I grew up in a very rural place and I live in a very rural place. A lot of and we have a lot of wilderness up here. A lot of the stories that I've collected from people and interviewed people are from hunters or campers or people who spend time in the wilderness. And it's amazing how many people have run into shadow people in camping experiences or hunting experiences. And what I find fascinating is the people who are running into them in the mountains, they seem to be extremely large. Like I interviewed one person, his stories in my book, my newest book, and he had one that when he was hiking at night, him and his buddies had a shadow figure come around a cliff and look at him, and he's talking about it being, between around 15 feet tall and just ginormous, just huge and stretched out, like all of its appendages seem to be stretched out. So I found those really fascinating, those stories.
Yeah, wow, that would be something else.
Yeah.
It would.
Speaking of mountains out in the woods, Bigfoot, Sasquatch?
Yeah, I've gotten quite a few stories about Sasquatch and Bigfoot. In this area in particular, it's interesting because all of the stories, not all of them, but a lot of the stories that I've collected from people, they don't know each other and they haven't heard each other's stories, but you could almost draw a 5-mile circle in the mountains, and they all kind of happen around that area. I interviewed a guy for my last book, and his story happened in the Wind Rivers, which are in Wyoming. It's a big mountain range in Wyoming. It's a wilderness area. And he talked about how he'd been camping alone up there for about a week. And he's laying in his tent and woke up early in the middle of the night. Early, it's around 2 o'clock in the morning. And he can hear heavy footsteps coming towards his tent and towards his camp. And he's listening, and it's really loud, and it gets into his camp, and he's just huddled in his sleeping bag, just trying to, be still. And it walked around his camp a little bit, and then it came to his tent, and he looked up, and the moon was almost full, so there was quite a bit of light. He could see the shadow of this giant creature, Bigfoot. And it actually reached out with his hand and pushed on the tent, and he could see the outline of this great, big, enormous, human-looking hand on his tent. And then it finally looked around a little bit more, and then he heard its footsteps as it pounded away from camp and down and away. And he talked about how scary it was then, but looking back at it now, he's like, he feels really lucky to have had an experience that a lot of people would like to have with Bigfoot or Sasquatch.
Yeah, I would like to have an experience, but just listening to you tell that story, I'm like, maybe I want it. Because
maybe not, right? Because especially when you're alone. I asked him about being alone, and he's like, yeah, it was being completely alone. I mean, up there's a lot of bears, so you're scared to begin with. But to be all alone with such a huge creature. 8-9 feet tall, 800 pounds. That would be really scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're just in a tent. Like,
right.
It's certainly just, it's not going to withstand anything.
Mm-mm. Nope. If it wanted to just rip it up and see what's inside, it would have no problem doing that. So.
I know. Yeah. I mean, if you're in an RV that you could just jump in the seat and start the thing up and take off, maybe. But,
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh. Yep.
Well, go ahead, Lish.
I was going to say, it seemed like there was a lot of stories in Utah. Do you have any idea why there's so much that goes on in Utah? Do you have any ideas on that?
Well, I think that's just where I'm localized right now.
Okay.
And so that's where I'm getting a lot of my stories. And this is where I grew up. And so, in the 25 or 25, 28 years, a lot of them before – I had internet or I had my website or I had my first book, it was all word of mouth. So that's why a lot of the stories come from northern Utah to begin with is just because this is where I've been, at for so many years. So I think I think a lot of places, wherever you go, will have a lot of experiences, localized around them.
Okay.
If I may, John, I want to ask you about one more story here because we just recently had an episode on the Wendigo.
Oh, yeah.
And you have one that it's called Sierra Wendigo.
The Sierra Wendigo, yeah. So I interviewed this gentleman. He came to me through an acquaintance, and he was living in Nevada, just outside of I'm trying to remember exactly where it was. But him and his girlfriend decided to go camping, and he was not a camper. He didn't grow up camping, but she did. And so she talked him into going. So they gathered up all their stuff and borrowed some stuff and went into the Sierra Nevada mountains west of Reno and drove up in and finally found a place to camp. And they had a nice evening, he said, and, cooked over a fire. And he said he felt really uneasy the whole time, but he chalked that up to the fact that he'd never really been camping before, and they were up there in the woods alone. So he didn't think much of it. And they went to bed, And in the middle of the night, he woke up and he could hear something walking towards camp. And he said it sounded really weird because it sounded like it was dragging something. It was like a thump and a drag. And he realized after listening for a minute that it was on 2 feet, whatever it was, and it was kind of dragging 1 foot. It's kind of how it sounded. And so it walked into his camp, and he reached over to get his flashlight and knocked something else off and made a sound. Well, the other thing too that he mentioned when it got close to their tent was the raspy, deep, kind of gurgly breath it had, like it had something in its lungs trying to get, couldn't breathe very well. And it ran just outside of camp. Well, he got his flashlight and his girlfriend woke up, and he peered out of the door, unzipped it, peered out of the door. And about 30 feet from camp, he spotted this thing. At first he thought, it looked like a person, had the outline of a person. It was pale, sickly. You could see all the bones in his back. It was facing away from him and had his hand on the tree and its head down. And the first thing that came to his mind is that it was a homeless person out there. And so he called out to it. He's like, "Hey, what's going on? What are you doing?" And at that point it looked over its shoulder at him, and he could see that, sickly, scraggly hair. Its eyes were dark, super sunk in, lips pulled back from black teeth. And he realized that this wasn't a person. This was something just horrible. And him and his girlfriend both saw it at this point. They threw everything in the car, breaking the poles for the tent, just anything they could get their hands on, and took off. They took off so fast. In fact, they got lost and had to park in an open space for the rest of the night and wait for the sun to come up so they could find their way out. But he just talked about, how sickly and pale and just, horrible it looked. And he never brought up Wendigo, but when I was, searching, because I like to do some research after I hear a story and find out, that's what I kind of believe it was.
Yeah.
The Native Americans talk about the Wendigo being a creature that's born out of somebody who turns to cannibalism, who wanders the earth, never being able to completely fulfill its need for food and its sickly look and everything like that. So, but that was definitely a terrifying one when he was telling me about it and, writing it up for him. That was definitely one of the scarier ones I've done. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, like I said, that was one that when I was interviewing him, even it's been, a lot of years since that happened, I could still hear the terror in his voice when he was talking about what he saw, and the fact that he's never went camping since then, which would definitely turn me off camping.
I was going to say, I believe that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just stay in hotels. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, I wouldn't go out camping anymore.
John, this has been a blast. And I do have one more question because I just want to keep asking you everything, but we want people to check out the book for themselves. But Glitches in the Matrix.
Yes. So those are stories that I've gathered from people that, don't necessarily fall into other categories. They're things of, people remembering events that are different now in time. Almost like if you're aware of the Mandela effect, almost like personal Mandela effects. I have a couple stories in the book. One of a gentleman who had a prize book of his that had a signed signature from the author, and he would show it off to everybody. That was his prized possession of his books. He put those away in storage, locked away, but when he pulled them out a few years later to display them, suddenly the signature's gone from that first edition, and it's in a different book. It's a different first edition that it was in. And he knows it was in this one because it was his favorite book. It was a book called Small Gods, and that is now gone. And it's actually in a different book, the signature from the author. And so it's has to do with, memory being changed, or doppelgangers are a big one. I've interviewed a gentleman for my second book who ran into his own personal doppelganger on campus when he was going to school. So it's definitely something I love to hear about. just unexplained stuff. So sorry.
Oh no, I was going to say, what do you do when you run into your own doppelganger? I mean, you freak out, but I'm assuming you got to fight them.
Well, what happened on this one is he was on campus on the quad on a blanket studying, and somebody drove up on a bike, and he looks up from his book, and it's him. And he said he was wearing almost the exact same clothes as him. The only difference was he's a Seattle Seahawks fan. And he had a Seattle Seahawks hat with him. Well, the other guy had a Seattle Seahawks hat on, but the only difference was it was different colors. It was a red and a brown, I think, color, but it still had the logo. But same, and so they looked at each other, and he went to talk to the guy, and the other him took off on the bike. He grabs his bike and tries to chase him down. And he goes around the corner of a building and disappears, and he could not find him. No idea where he went, but they were within 5 feet of each other. It wasn't like, oh, this guy kind of looks like me. It was literally him. So It's really strange. Yeah, definitely. Strange situation.
Oh, man. That's freaky.
Yeah.
John, this has been so much fun. Your new book, Stranger West. Tell everybody where they can get this book.
So it is available on Amazon. It's either on a Kindle version or softback. All 3 books can be found. Stranger Bridgerland, Beyond Stranger Bridgerland, and Stranger West can all be found on Amazon.
John, thank you so much. I'll put some links in the show notes for everybody. This has been a blast. I really appreciate you taking time to hang with us today.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
All right, John, you take care.
Yep, bye.
Hey, thanks again, John. That was amazing. I tell you what, why don't we take a quick break, and we'll come back and talk about some of that. Nash, what is like the one thing that could go wrong on a paranormal investigation?
Why, Mark? That's the lack of food.
People are putting in their backpack a EMF detector, a flashlight, a digital recorder, but if you forget that snack, your whole evening could be ruined.
That's exactly right.
So if you head over to mfjerky.com, you can order some delicious beef jerky, and if you use our code SpookyJerky15, you can save 15% on your order, and it's a big savings. That way, when you're out doing an investigation, you're not going to worry about hunger pains. Your stomach's not going to growl and mess up a possible EVP.
Right.
And like we like to say here, Moses Family Jerky, the best thing to pack on your paranormal or normal adventure. And we're back. Oh, wow. That was a blast. Lish, anything that stood out to you that you want to talk about or would just freak you out if it happened to you?
God, the Wendigo story that he had in the book, oh my gosh. There's no way. Like, to have them hear this noise, open up their tent, look outside and see this creature that they couldn't really explain, that just freaks me out. It makes me not want to camp at all,
Right.
Yeah, no.
But I mean, between that and one of the other stories where he was talking about Bigfoot actually coming into the campsite and hearing it and actually kind of reaching out, seeing the shadow, and having him like paw at the tent and whatnot. Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. It's like, there are a lot of really good hotels and bed and breakfasts around, I'm saying, and that maybe on the newer side, but...
Would you rather stay in a haunted hotel or a haunted forest? Or a forest with Bigfoot around touching your tent?
Well, that's a good question.
Because that also sounded...
Yeah.
Bigfoot running around touching your tent.
Well, yeah. I
arrest that guy.
Arrest that guy. But I have really big feet. I would probably go with Bigfoot in the tent in the woods. Yeah. Knowing that, though, I mean, I would probably do all kinds of things to keep it to stay up late. I would probably had way too many beers, so I would be using the facilities all over the place.
Oh, what?
Marking the territory. Doing everything that I can do to mark my area so that if anything came by, they didn't come into the, my
Lord.
campsite.
I suppose if I was in a camper that like had hard walls,
Yeah.
might be a little different story than like a tent with just like fabric.
Yeah.
I was just listening to your story, Nash. I figured, so you would probably drink a bunch of beers, pass out. Bigfoot would literally be standing right next to you, and you never know.
I would never even know.
Wake up the next day, and you're like, oh.
I'd be like, how did everybody sleep? Oh, pretty good. Well, Bigfoot was right here. Well,
and I know what you mean about a camper, but how it would still be terrifying if you were in your camper, getting some sleep, and something just hit it and rocked it.
Yeah.
And that, because that one movie Exist, he knocked that camper off the side of the cliff.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and we've heard stories about, Bigfoot being irradiated and moving, shaking houses and campers and mobile homes and whatnot. And how many times have we heard about pushing over a car or doing some physical damage? I don't know.
I think I'd rather take my chances with ghosts.
Yeah.
Personally, but
Yeah, but the one ghost, like, now he was talking about how she had no paranormal experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when she asked why, he's like, well, we said don't mess with her. Mm-hmm. And then when they were like, well, I guess it's okay now. And they kind of crawled in bed and like touched her hair.
I know.
And then left a little, was like laughing. Yeah. All right. So I'm like, I don't know. That seems pretty.
That's creepy.
That would scare the crap out of me.
A little close. Yeah, I don't. That's what I mean. Is having that experience by instead of me running around outside urinating all over the place to mark my territory, I'll go with the beer and the urination, or there's somebody cozying up in bed with me while you're not paying attention, stroking my hair. Normally, I'm into that, but it's got to be a person.
It's so funny because now I'm sitting there thinking, like, so if we ever go on a camping trip together?
Oh, I'm going to mark the territory. Oh, trust me, we're all going to be safe. Okay.
Wow.
And they say if you're ever have a deer come in your backyard, the best thing to keep deer away is human hair. Human hair. If you take like old hair and sprinkle it around, the deer don't dig on the smell of human hair. So they won't go across it. They won't if you put hair in your bushes or in your garden, deer won't come up and eat your veggies.
No way.
Yeah. So when we all go camping, just know I will have completely shaved my entire body in the sake of safety for us all. So I can sprinkle hair all the way around the campsite. Just so that we all stay safe. That's what I'm willing to do.
And then it happens to be a windy night. and then we're like, what's in my chili?
What is that?
Ew.
Oh, God. I'm never going camping with you.
I know. You ruined it for me, Nash.
Oh, but no Wendigos, no Bigfoot, no nothing. Just
I don't think your body hair would keep a Wendigo away.
No, it probably would attract him.
Yeah,
you're probably right.
Because it would be like, oh, it smells like somebody alive.
Yeah,
Gonna go.
somebody I want to eat.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I would say, Bigfoot, he'd stay away, and we tell all the Bigfoot, he is crazy. Absolutely crazy.
The other tent, the other one.
Yeah.
The other one.
Yeah, the other tent where they're not peeing everywhere and shaving their bodies. This guy's crazy.
Oh, man.
They're telling stories. They're telling tales to their Bigfoot children.
You'd be like, well, I went to this campsite, and there was this guy with a big bag of hair.
They'll be like, oh, my God, did you ever hear the story about the Nash? They'll start telling that to little kids. If you don't go to sleep right now, the Nash is going to come to get you.
He's a giant hairless creature.
Oh, man.
Wow. Yeah. Hotels. Hotels.
Hotels are the way to go.
Now, Nash, what would you do? Hopefully it doesn't include shaving body hair. But what would you do if you were just chilling, reading a book, and you looked up and there was another you on a bicycle? But it was a subtle difference. Like in this case, the baseball cap or the whatever cap.
Right.
What would you do?
Well,
because again, I want to get up and chase him down, and because you got to figure out what's going on. But I think you could be in shock at first.
Yeah, and if you actually came face to face with like a doppelganger, would you do what you see on TV and you do the whole mirror routine where you sidestep or you sidestep the other side?
You be doing the robot?
I'd be doing the robot and like checking my head and doing like baseball signs or something like that.
And until they messed up, you're like,
it'd be like, I got you, sucker. Yeah. I don't know. That would be, I've always felt that there's always somebody out there who's looks just like you, but to be face to face with that or a spirit who's mimicking you or something like that, completely different. And what I would do, you would just stare. I think I would literally just stare and freeze and stare.
Yeah.
And I don't understand. It doesn't compute,
Right. And if you do decide to chase him down and kick his butt,
Yeah.
what if he wins?
Exactly.
Then he's taking your place.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh God.
Yeah, so
And then he comes running back and tries to get the police to arrest you. He looks like the crazy person because you've already moved in with the family.
Right. And then the real me looks even worse because I'm completely
Then nobody
hairless.
believes you.
I'm completely hairless and nobody believes me because this other guy looks much better and he's in better shape.
What if you met your doppelganger while you were out camping?
Oh.
And you both were shaving your body hair and peeing? You guys would probably be like best friends.
You would be best friends. We'd be drinking beers together.
Let me tell you about it.
That's right.
Now I'm starting to think your doppelganger, actually, you guys would be like best
we
friends.
would probably hang out. You're like, hey, man, you want to get a pizza? Yeah, let's go.
Well, the rest of the world is like trying to solve some equation to stop the end of the world because two Nashes shouldn't be in the same
That's right.
space together.
Just as long as you don't ever touch. You don't physically touch.
We'll just stop right
You
there.
can't
I know.
occupy the
Oh,
same
Just a hand
space.
gesture you're making.
I know.
Well, I'm not. Yeah,
It's a good thing this is a podcast. A PG-13 podcast.
Exactly.
That was a lot of fun. John, again, one more time, I just can't thank you enough for hanging out with us, spending your valuable time, because I had a great time. And I had no idea in the world that listening to your scary stories would lead to Nash.
Running naked through the woods.
I know.
Not in a million years could I have
No.
predicted that conversation would happen. Hey, that's just the kind of show we got.
It's how it goes. It's where when the Nasquatch shows up, nobody knows.
Lish, anything else for everybody out there?
No, I feel like I need to start training now so that when I do come up against my doppelganger, I
You're
can
ready.
win.
You're ready for action.
Yeah. Whatever might happen. We might be best friends. Who knows? But
I
this
see,
way I'll
like,
be prepared.
I see like some Buffy the Slayer montage
Yes.
training thing going on here.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Ooh,
I love it.
nice. You go to Buffy the Slayer. I always go to Jean-Claude in Bloodsport.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
That's where I went for her.
Yeah. Well,
I love Buffy.
Okay, well,
So
there you go.
that's exacty what it would be.
Nice.
Bloodsport's like one of the top 10 action movies of all
Right?
time.
I know it. Now, for me, and one of the things that kind of creeped me out a little bit is and it kind of hit home a little bit, is he was talking about the Stair Monster and how he could hear steps, and they were studying, and the person he was studying with could hear the steps. He got really frustrated about it, and that made me think about my son Evan. And there have been many times when we will be in the basement and we'll hear like footsteps going just on the main floor.
Oh, God.
But the whole family, including the cat, is down in the basement and there's nobody else up there. So I can kind of get a sense of what that's going to be like, but those stories and his Stair Monster sounds like 1,000 times worse than what we occasionally hear in our house.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Just going to leave it at wow.
Well, regardless, I would still shave all my hair and run around.
Oh, my gosh.
I somehow knew we were going to end on that.
Yep.
Remember, folks. Hey, go to our website, paranormalpunchers.com. All kinds of info there. You can fill out that form, send us some feedback. Maybe you want to have some feedback on tonight's topic, and maybe the best way is to shave body hair in the woods.
You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to go be green out there.
That's right.
Can't be
That's
lugging
right.
a generator for your electric buzz cutter.
Yeah, you have to use the old clipper style. That's going to be painful.
Okay.
Yeah, but then again, if somebody actually reaches out and grabs you, you're slick and you can move around from you're slick with sweat and you're just
Oh my
slick
God.
and you're moving.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
Well, hey, can't get any weirder, so remember, If it's not weird,
it's not worth checking out.